You won't believe what happened next. A rumor started flying the week John Witherspoon passed. People swore the cast of Friday didn't show up to honor him. Wild, right? A man who made millions of us laugh till our ribs hurt, and the folks who made that laughter with him supposedly didn't come? Hold that thought. Because the real story is much bigger, warmer, and way more human than a messy headline. Tonight, we're celebrating a legend, clearing up the confusion, and taking you from a Detroit living room packed with 11 kids all the way to a Hollywood memorial filled with tears, giggles, and love. Ready? Let's go. If you grew up quoting Pops, or you've ever heard "you gotta coordinate" and immediately pictured a mushroom-colored suit, you already know why John Witherspoon felt like family. He had that face that could melt a room, and that voice that could land a joke before the punchline even arrived. And yet, behind the bright lights, there's a saga, a working comic who never stopped grinding, a dad who chose family over flash, and a community that showed up for him. Just not always in the way rumors made it seem. So was the Friday crew missing? Or was it all one big mix-up? Keep listening. The truth is coming, and it's sweeter than the gossip. John Witherspoon, born John Witherspoon on January 27, 1942, came up in Detroit, Michigan, a city humming with factory engines and the velvet soul of Motown. He wasn't an only child. He was one of 12. Imagine that, a dinner table that sounded like an orchestra tuning up, laughter bouncing off every wall, and a kid named John figuring out, fast, how to get his voice heard. He did what any natural performer does. He turned everyday life into an act. He'd clock the way somebody walked, copy it, pitch his voice, roll an eyebrow, and boom, cue the laughter. In a house that big, being funny wasn't just fun. It was how you stood out. Art ran in the family, too. His older brother William Witherspoon wrote at Motown and co-penned What Becomes of the Broken-Hearted, a classic that's still floating around wedding playlists and old-school radio. Another brother worked behind the scenes in TV in Detroit. His sister, Gertrude Stax, became a well-known pastor. So yeah, even before John Witherspoon hit a stage, creativity and calling were already in the air at home. And John? He wasn't just cracking jokes. He played trumpet and French horn. That rhythm you felt in his timing later? It started with breath control, embouchure, and hours of practice on instruments most kids never touch. Comedy with a backbeat. That was his secret sauce. Before the clubs, there was a little detour, modeling. Yep. In the late 60s, John Witherspoon hit a few runways and print gigs. The gigs weren't headline-making, but they taught him something priceless: how to command a room without saying a word, how to hold eye contact, how to use stillness. Later, when he'd pause and just stare, letting you laugh before the joke even landed, that came from those lessons in posture and presence. Then the clubs called. Detroit crowds can be tough. They'll laugh loud if you're good, and let you know quick if you're not. He sharpened up there, then took that hustle to New York and Los Angeles, walking into rooms where the lights are hot, the mics are unforgiving, and the only thing that matters is your next line. By the mid-70s, TV started calling. John Witherspoon popped up on shows like Barnaby Jones, 1976, Good Times, What's Happening, and The Incredible Hulk. Small parts, sure, but watch the tapes. He took 3 lines and made them feel like 10. Then came The Richard Pryor Show in 1977. If you know comedy, you know that's a big deal. Richard Pryor didn't share his stage lightly, and John Witherspoon brought that sneaky, playful fire that made sketches zing. It was proof this wasn't just a club killer. This was a TV-ready, camera-loves-him kind of funny. The 80s gave him his film stride. He dipped into The Jazz Singer, 1980, then hit cult classics like Hollywood Shuffle, 1987, and I'm Gonna Get You Sucka, 1988, and Even Bird, 1988. But the role that blew him up in the mainstream? Boomerang, 1992, where he played Mr. Jackson, The man who explained fashion coordination with more flair than a runway and dropped one of cinema's most quotable moments. If you can hear coordinate and not smile, check your pulse. It's not just the line, it's that he sold it with eyes, hands, and rhythm. Comedy jazz. Then history knocked. In 1995, Ice Cube and Chris Tucker anchored a little film called Friday. A tiny budget, a neighborhood story, and an on-screen dad named Willie Jones, played by John Witherspoon, who showed up with the kind of old-school wisdom that sounds ridiculous until it's true. That bathroom scene, the backyard talk, the sideways threats delivered with love, he grounded the movie, gave it heart, and slid you jokes that lived rent-free in your head for years. Friday made over $27 million on roughly a $3.5 million budget, and it turned into a cultural time capsule. Suddenly, Pops wasn't just a character, he was an archetype. He came back for Next Friday, 2000, and Friday After Next, 2002. And with each round, the love grew. And so did the paychecks. In interviews over the years, John Witherspoon would say he earned about $5,000 for the first one, then jumped to hundreds of thousands for the second, and hit around $1 million for the third. Numbers aside, the trajectory told a story. A working actor who kept making himself essential. TV never let him go. From 1995 to 1999, he became John Pops Williams on the Wayans Bros. Clumsy, loud, lovable, the TV dad who'd roast you and hug you in the same breath. Later, he gave his voice to Robert Granddad Freeman on the Boondocks, 2005 to 2014, introducing a new generation to his comedy music. Wise, cranky, ridiculous, and somehow always right by the final scene, he swung through The Tracy Morgan Show, 2003, The First Family, 2012, Black Jesus, 2014 to 2019, and even a quick moment on Blackish in 2019. The pattern was the same. Put John Witherspoon in anything, and it gets a little funnier, a little warmer, a little more alive. Let's talk money for a second. Not to be nosy, but because it reveals something about the man. By the time he passed in 2019, estimates had John Witherspoon around $4 million in net worth. That's not private jet money, but it's solid, especially for a guy who worked steady and didn't chase a shiny lifestyle. He did what old-school pros do. He invested in a life. In the early 2000s, he bought homes in Sherman Oaks, quiet, real, family-friendly. One around $830,000 in 2001, another around $550,000 in 2001-2002. Nothing ridiculous, nothing to flex about, just smart moves that turned into long-term value. He used to say he cared less about getting rich and more about working. You could feel that. Every role felt like a love letter to the craft, not a cash grab. And he kept his personal world tight. In 1988, John Witherspoon married Angela Robinson-Witherspoon, an artist in her own right, actor, director, and the steady center of the home they built. They raised two sons, Alexander Witherspoon, who prefers a private life, and John David J.D. Witherspoon, a comedian and creator who clearly inherited the timing gene. Ask J.D. what his dad was like, and you'll hear the kind of tribute that hits you in the chest. He wasn't just a father, he was a best friend. Also get this, David Letterman, yes, that David Letterman, was close friends with John Witherspoon for decades and became JD's godfather. That kind of god-tier comedy kinship doesn't happen by accident. It happens because people trust you, love you, and laugh with you for a long time. Look around any green room from the 80s through the 2000s, and you'd spot him with Tim Reed, Jay Leno, Robin Williams, Marlon Wayans, Cedric the Entertainer, George Wallace, Arsenio Hall, real ones who knew what it means to bomb, balloon, and build. John Witherspoon was the same guy on and off the set. Simple tastes, big heart, always time for a story. He wasn't into flash. He preferred a house with laughter to a mansion with echoes. And somehow that down-to-earth spirit seeped into his characters. You could feel it in Willie Jones and Pops. Men who talk loud, love loud, and mean well even when they mess it up. Then came October 29th, 2019. John Witherspoon passed at home in Sherman Oaks, sudden and shocking. The cause? An acute heart attack tied to coronary artery disease. He dealt with high blood pressure and weight over the years. Silent risks that sometimes don't give you warning. The timing felt cruel. He was still working, still doing sets, still jumping into shows. He'd just been in projects like Reality Queen. And I got the hookup too. There was even talk, again, about doing Last Friday. Ice Cube has talked about the delays and how much he wished they'd gotten it done while John Witherspoon could have taken one more bow as Willie Jones. The grief rolled in like a wave. First family, then friends, then fans. Social feeds turned into memorial walls. You saw posts from Ice Cube, Chris Tucker, Regina King, Marlon Wayans, Cedric the Entertainer, George Wallace, Arsenio Hall, Chance the Rapper, and so many others. People weren't just sad, they were grateful. Clip after clip of Pop's speeches, Granddad lectures, and that coordinate swagger, laughter, and tears in the same scroll. Now, about that rumor. The one saying the Friday cast didn't show up. Here's what actually happened. The family held a public memorial. Think celebration of life more than formal funeral. On November 5th, 2019, in Los Angeles. People from all corners of comedy came out. From the Friday world, Ice Cube was there, speaking about his on-screen dad with a voice that cracked more than once. Chris Tucker, quieter, more reflective, paid his respects in person. Tommy Tiny Lister, who played Debo, came through. Anna Maria Horsford, who played Betty Jones, was there too. Folks took the mic, told stories, cried, and laughed. That's the room John Witherspoon would have wanted. One where tears didn't cancel jokes and jokes didn't cancel love. So why did people swear the cast wasn't there? 2 reasons. First, confusion between a private family burial and the public memorial. Some fans caught sight of a smaller, private moment and assumed that was the funeral. Second, a few big names couldn't be there physically and paid tribute in other ways. Regina King, who worked with John Witherspoon on Friday, and later on the Boondocks, sent a heartfelt video message. Scheduling is brutal when you're in the middle of projects. She made sure her words were in the room even if she couldn't be. Marlon Wayans, who loved him like a father from the Wayans Bros days, wrote a tribute that reads like a hug. He talked about those tight embraces John Witherspoon gave every time they parted, and how this time the hug would have to be in memory. Work pulled him away. But the love didn't move an inch. That's not absence. That's adulthood, responsibility, and respect, all trying to fit inside the same calendar. And the memorial itself? It was the kind of ceremony you remember forever. Comics like Cedric the Entertainer, George Wallace, Angela Gibbs, Bill Bellamy. One by one, they stepped up and shared. Not glossy resume notes, real moments. The time John Witherspoon gave a tag that saved a bit. The time he stayed late to help a kid comic iron out a closer. The way he could make a green room feel like a living room. You'd hear the room crack up, then go quiet. Someone would wipe their eyes, then deliver a line John Witherspoon would have roasted them for. That's the mix he gave us for decades. Giggle now, think later, love always. By the end, people were hugging strangers like cousins who'd just met at a reunion. There's another layer to all this: legacy. We talk about careers like they're measured in awards and top billing. John Witherspoon reminds you there's another scoreboard: time on stage, faces you've lit up, lives you've made a little easier for 90 minutes. You hear people say he could make a bad script funny just by walking into the scene. That wasn't magic. That was craft, stamina, and a sense of mischief that never got old. He was the rare performer who could be outrageous and oddly wholesome at the same time. He could squint, smack his lips, pause, and you were done. That's decades of practice living inside one look. Money talk again, but only because it explains his choices. John Witherspoon didn't chase mansions. He picked Sherman Oaks over splashy neighborhoods because it felt like a life, not a set. He built a home where his wife Angela Robinson-Witherspoon thrived. His sons found their lanes, and friends, like David Letterman, were welcome like family. That's why when he passed, the mourning felt so personal. People didn't just miss the actor. They missed Pops coming through the door, Granddad at the dinner table, Willie Jones in the yard, telling you something you don't want to hear but need to hear anyway. Let's circle back to the rumor one last time because it matters how we remember people. Did the Friday cast skip John Witherspoon's goodbye? Number. Some made it to the memorial and spoke from the heart. Ice Cube, Chris Tucker, Tommy Tiny Lister, Anna Maria Horsford. Some were kept away by production schedules and sent love through videos and posts. Regina King, Marlon Wayans. Mix-ups around a private family service added to the confusion, and social media did what it does. Filled the gaps with guesses. But the people who worked with him didn't turn their backs. In every way that counts, they showed up. The bigger truth? John Witherspoon's life isn't defined by who sat where at a ceremony. It's defined by a kid from Detroit who learned to play instruments, then learned to play rooms. By a working comic who built a career one lineup at a time. By a TV dad who felt like your dad. By a voice actor who gave cartoon wisdom more weight than most lectures. By a husband and father who picked love and consistency over flash and headlines. That's why we still smile when we say his name. That's why we still quote him at cookouts, in group chats, and during late-night arguments about the best movie dads. So if you're watching this with a grin and a little lump in your throat, you get it. The best way to honor John Witherspoon is to keep the laughter going and keep the facts straight. The Friday family didn't go missing. They found their own ways to say goodbye, and the room was full. Full of jokes, full of stories, full of people he lifted along the way. Here's what I want to know from you. What's your all-time favorite John Witherspoon moment? Is it Willie Jones in that iconic bathroom scene? Pops barking orders at the counter? Granddad laying down a ridiculous rule you low-key agreed with? Or that Mr. Jackson swagger in Boomerang that made you look at your closet like, do my socks coordinate? Drop it in the comments and tell us why that moment still hits. And if this tribute made you smile, brought back a memory, or cleared up a rumor you'd heard, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who quotes Pops at least once a week. And subscribe for more deep dive stories about the people who shaped our culture. We'll keep it honest, respectful, and fun. Just the way John Witherspoon would have wanted. Now, go make somebody laugh today. It's what he did best, and it's the kind of legacy we can all carry forward.